Recent news headlines, as well as many global leaders, are stating that Israel's war on Hamas has seen far too many Gazan civilian casualties. Historically, Israel's been known as one of the most moral militaries in the world. So, is this headline true? Or is this yet another one of those misleading international attacks against Israel? Let's take a look at the facts. I'm Joshua, and this is the Israel Guys. Welcome back to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of Jew hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, you should have a direct connection to the land and people of Israel. As always, go up, subscribe, hit that like button, and let's get some notifications on all of these shows as they come in. Follow us on social media. As always, guys, this is a fascinating topic here with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken on the New York Times. Here on this link, we're going to watch this video in just 1 second, but he is at the World Economic Forum in Switzerland. This just came out, and he has some words to say about what's going on in Gaza and acting like if he was not there helping to coach Israel somehow, things could be much worse. Check this video out.
For me, I think for so many of us, what we're seeing every single day in Gaza is gut-wrenching. And the suffering we're seeing among innocent men, women, and children breaks my heart. The question is, what is to be done? We've made judgments about how we thought we could be most effective in trying to shape this in ways to get more humanitarian assistance to people, to get better protections and minimize civilian casualties. And at every step along the way, not only have we impressed upon Israel its responsibilities to do that, we've seen some progress in areas where, absent our engagement, I don't believe it would have happened.
All right, so he says that the war's toll on civilians in Gaza is gut-wrenching. So he's basically saying Israel's not doing a good job, and we could validate that here in a moment by some of the headlines that are going down on mainstream media, that he's also promoting that. Like, Israel's war on Hamas in Gaza is having mass casualties on Gazans. This is hard, and it's gut-wrenching to see innocent men, women, and children, and they're suffering in Gaza. Let's break this down for a moment on why is Secretary of State, and of course, no, here at the Israel Guys, of course we don't want to see people suffering, we don't want to see that, but what our big question is Israel out of bounds? Are they out of check? I mean, right now we're seeing a big showdown, the International Court of Justice, the International Criminal Court, all these international entities coming against Israel, saying Israel is somehow out of line. You're not allowed to defend yourself. What's really going on? And is the casualties, civilian casualties in Gaza, actually high? This is what we're going to answer right now. Okay, so let's take a look at Anthony Blinken, representing America, right? Secretary of State. So I want to put this in focus. Let's look at another situation and then put Israel and its situation on, okay, let's look at an American situation. Let's look at 9/11, a terror attack that hit America. What was America's response? And then we'll look at Israel and what Israel's response is to a very similar situation. Actually, on October 7th, many people were saying this is Israel's 9/11 moment. Mass terrorism hit this country. So what happened in 9/11? Well, everybody knows we lost nearly 3,000 American citizens just like that on American ground. Well, since 9/11, on American wars against fighting that terror, America's war on terror, we've killed 432,993 civilians have died by American military invasion into these countries fighting terrorism. Now, let's see, and there's actually an estimate of 3.6 to 3.8 million people have died indirectly. So those were direct people, innocent civilians killed, and indirect innocent civilians killed in post 9/11 war zones is to 3.6 to 3.8 million. Okay, so now that brings the total American deaths caused by their war initiated because of the attack on our soil. 3,000 Americans die. What's our response? Nearly 5 million innocent civilians in Arab countries killed. Okay, that's the American answer to what you do when, or how they did it. I mean, obviously, we killed a lot of terrorists. We took down all massive terrorist regimes. We're not going to get into the nitty gritties of how we felt, a lot of that as well, but that's what happened. We took out a lot of bad guys, but we also, if you want to talk about innocent civilians, America has 5 million innocent civilians estimated, nearly 5 million innocent civilians on our hands for how we dealt with terrorism on our soil. Now, Anthony Blinken has the guts to come in and act like Israel doesn't have that responsibility to go and fight terrorism the same way he did it. He actually holds Israel to a different set of rules, that Israel must somehow fight this war differently than America did in our response to terrorism. Obviously, this doesn't make a lot of sense, why the rest of the world holds Israel to a different set of rules, and somehow Israel's committing genocide when the rest of the world, when they defend themselves against their enemies that would want to see them annihilated, it's a problem. Well, I don't think it's a problem for Israel to defend themselves. The ICJ court situation now is absolutely ludicrous. The fact that they could say that Israel doesn't have the right to defend themselves is insanity. America saying that their war on Hamas has had way too many civilian casualties, when America has killed more civilians in recent wars than I can't imagine who else. And they're the one lecturing Israel on this situation. Let's look at the international media headlines real quick to validate this point of the world's opinion on Israel's war in Gaza. And maybe this is actually a world's attack on Israel, siding with the terrorists. Can you imagine headlines like this coming up after 9/11? The U.S., kills hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians, and they're not fighting this war correctly. No, nobody ever talked about that because they were fighting a war against and they were focused on killing the enemy. And obviously in war is horrible and civilians die, and we'll do everything we can to not have that happen. But look at these headlines. Gaza civilian deaths outpace those of other conflict zones. Despite U.S. pressure on Israel, casualty count in Gaza remains high. Another one, UN chief calls for legal accountability amidst unprecedented civilian casualties in Gaza. Another one, Blinken says civilian death toll in Gaza far too high. Another one, more civilian casualties recorded in 2023 than any year since 2010. Another, on all these headlines are just rampant right now, all over. Everybody's condemning Israel. Last one here. Gaza civilians under Israeli barrage are being killed at historic pace. Hey guys, we'll be right back. But first, are you ready to stand with Israel in its hour of need? Israel's people are struggling, with thousands of families displaced and 300,000 soldiers called up to the front without enough food, equipment, and support. But with your help, we can change that. Mayor Panim is tirelessly working to provide meals daily to over 6,000 soldiers and 2,000 displaced families. They've served 1 million warm meals to soldiers and families since the war began, and distributed 250,000 essential care packages to injured soldiers, families, and those on duty. They have equipped soldiers with critical items like mattresses, pillows, blankets, and even combat essentials. Today, your support is more than just physical aid. It brings a message of solidarity and hope to the people of Israel. Help us to ensure that no soldier goes hungry, no displaced family feels alone, and those in distress here in Israel find comfort and support. Click the link in the description below to support Mayor Panim today. Let's take a look at this. Everyone seems to be taking the same route. They're all like Anthony Blinken. We all defeated our enemies, and we killed a lot of innocent people while we did it. Every nation around that's fought wars did that. But yet Israel's not allowed. But what maybe one of the answers to this really complex situation is what are they calling civilians? Maybe if Blinken's definition of a civilian is wrong, then maybe he could be saying all these people you're killing in Gaza, if they're all civilians, then this is horrible. But is Israel actually killing civilians, or are they taking out the terror bed that lies in Gaza? Let's define what is a civilian and what's not. That's a big problem right now. The international world sees most of the people in Gaza as civilians, as poor refugees. Is that correct? I believe it's incorrect. Let's take a look at this. The international definition on civilian. I took this right out of the book on the laws of international definition here. It says a civilian person is an individual who is not a member of armed forces. Okay, all right. So what's the armed forces? The international humanitarian law states that, I'll quote, the armed forces of a party to the conflict are made up of all of the organized armed forces, groups, and units that are under the authority of a commander responsible for the conduct of his subordinates. If we just take that definition on what's going on in Gaza, the people, the 75%, let's just go through a few questions here and see if maybe more than the guy in the tactical gear with the gun are on the team of the people that would want to see all Jews annihilated and that are subordinates to that Hamas regime that is attacking Israel. Are the 70+% of the Gazans that voted for Hamas a part of that? What about all the Gazan citizens that approved of the Hamas 7th massacre? What about in all the those so-called innocent civilians that are housing weapons and ammunitions? They're part of the war, right? That's actually joining yourself to the war front. I have personal friends that I actually have just spoken with today that said every house they go to in Gaza as they are clearing, every one of those so-called civilian houses has arms and ammunitions stored in their houses. If they're not a part of the war front, what is that? What about all the families that taught their children that the greatest and most lofty personal achievement in life would be to kill a Jew? Is that an innocent civilian? If your goal in life is to kill someone, you were taught and trained that that's what you were to do, are you innocent? If that is your goal, this doesn't sound so innocent to me. And when the 50 places in the security barrier are broken and everyone, 4,000 people, run out of there, were they all Hamas terrorists? No. These were many, hundreds and hundreds of so-called civilians ran and killed and captured innocent civilian Jews and brought them into captivity. We've talked about it already on this show. There's very few innocent civilians operating in Gaza. They are under what we just read earlier, the international humanitarian law that states that the commander, that the force under the subordinates of a radical regime like we see in Hamas are not innocent. They're not considered innocent civilians if they are a part and actively operating in the war machine that is fighting you. That's not innocent civilians. These people are actively a part of the war. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's people there that are wishing not to be a part of it. And if they don't have arms storage in their houses, and if they don't have guns to fight, and they're not holding their children in front of them and running in to kill Jews, and again, that's one of the reasons for what so-called these civilian casualties is because they're propping these people up in front of them, because they're under them. They're a part of the war front. They're moving them in front of them, and the world is refusing to understand that that is Hamas's whole operating operation, and their whole war front is that exact move, and the international world is falling for it. Blinken's falling for it and actually empowering it. It works. Keep that child in front of you, and I will tell the world that Israel's killing them. Israel's not killing them. Israel is taking out an extremist force that not only wants to annihilate Israel, it wants to annihilate all of the Western world. And the Western world is not backing up Israel, is falling for the Hamas approach on this whole situation, saying that these deaths are actually caused by Israel. Absolutely not. Do not buy it. Do not take that into account. More than just these so-called innocent civilians housing and being a part of the war front, there's another interesting fact. Every single one of the houses that the soldiers I've spoken with personally said every house has maps. All the Gazans have maps, and all of their maps are of Israel, and the Palestinian, they see Israel as no longer. Their maps that are outlining the area have no Israel anymore on them. It's all called Palestine, and every Jew is absolutely obliterated. There's no Jew left on the map. It's all now Palestine. That's another telling point of the enemy that Israel's facing. Innocent civilians? Innocent civilians that have an ideology that every Jew should be killed and wiped into the sea. Doesn't sound so innocent civilian to me. Hope I've given you guys something to think about. There's so much in this. Lastly, I just want to say it again. By the definition, the person that is fighting you and that fighting force, how can that be called innocent? If they together have joined the Hamas and supported it, voted it in, and been a part of that force, how can it be called innocent civilians? Again, I'll leave you to the rest. But guys, as always, let's tune out that fake news. The fake news is so out there. It's so rampant. It's in our everyday. It's all over. And we have to stop letting that in. The message from Blinken may sound okay, but it's misleading and it's incorrect. Israel, remember, is one of the most moral militaries and does more to ensure civilian life and save civilian life than any other military in human history. Do not believe the lie that you're seeing on international media right now that Israel is killing innocent people. No. There may be people that are dying that should not be there, but it's not Israel that's putting them there. Israel is trying to remove them. It's not Israel that's responsible for that. Israel's fighting a war, and they will win this war. And if Israel has its way, there'll be very little civilian death, because Israel's not about killing innocent civilians. Get that straight right now, and don't listen to the forums where Blinken is putting out a message that is incorrect. Don't follow the news headlines that are telling you something that is so incorrect, inconsistent, not true with what's actually happening here. Again, as always, tune out the fake news and tune into what's actually happening here in Israel's heartland. We'll be back every Monday through Friday with your direct connection to the land and people of Israel.